Hello, thanks for being here. Today I am going to talk about books and then put that on the internet, which is very and perhaps terribly ironic for me because I was taught growing up to never put anything personal on the internet, and with exception of my social security number, what you see behind me, my library, is the most intensely personal thing about me, and here I am putting it where I wasn't supposed to, but that's okay, because the reason I'm doing this today is that I'm about to move to a completely different region of the country, several hundred miles away, and everything about my life is going to change, including this library. So I wanted to make a sort of living record of what my exact library is at this exact time in my life. And I'm thinking right now of the Michel de Montaigne quote that I have not made my book as much as it has made me. I think that's close enough, but you get the point. I feel that on every single one of these spines, there is a piece of my soul just completely naked on display. Whether it's showcasing who I've been in the past, who I currently am, who I want to be, who I've previously wanted to be, whether I've read a book on this shelf 4 times, or I've never even opened it. Well, I've opened all my books, but if I've only read very short parts of it, or whether I read it every single day, you see the point. There is a piece of myself in every single thing here, and she's about to change. My library is sturdy, she is strong, but she has no other option than to be fluid, because although a part of me wants to just pack up everything exactly as it is and just transplant it to where I'm moving to, that's not possible, and I know that shouldn't be possible because we are supposed to change, and therefore our books will. So as of right now, this is who I am, and this will change in approximately, I don't know, 20 minutes or however long it takes me to film this, because as soon as I am done, all of these books are being taken off. The shelves are going to be dusted and then deconstructed, and many books will get put into boxes, but many of them won't, because logistics are a thing and I cannot move 1,800 books across the country. Point being that it's all going to change. So thank you for being here. I hope you get something out of this, whether it's a book recommendation or encouragement to think about how your current library or your media collection is an illustration of who you are today, or in the past, or who you want to be. I've said that before. Okay, thanks for being here, and let's talk about some books. So I guess I'm gonna do this shelf by shelf, which means this is gonna take a lot more than 20 minutes, but it's fine. Starting with my first shelf, it felt very important to me to have my historiography section be the first shelf in my library. This is probably my favorite type of book to read because it can be equal parts theory, but also history and philosophy. It feels like a joining of genres that is just very exciting to me. And even though, as you can see, I have quite a few of these books, and they're up here as well, they are, oh, okay, that's good. Even though I have a lot of these books, they all say something different to me, at least the ones I read, because I'm not gonna lie to you, I have not read every single one of these. But I think the most influential would be What is History by E.H. Carr. This is the British Penguin edition, and here's your mass market paperback. But I read that when I was a young history major in undergrad, and the discussion of history being an art versus a science in this book, as well as in Mark Bloch's Uses and Inventions of History, it just set me up for, I don't want to say success, but it set me up to be so passionate about the subject of history. So I've just kind of collected these. And then my biggest collection of books are the Penguin Black Spine Classics. Oh yeah. So they are all organized chronologically. Oh, this is tilted. Hopefully that's better. But within chronologically, I have the earliest editions out here that are still organized chronologically. I probably will be getting rid of a few of these because as much as Plautus is great, he has nothing to do with where my career in education is going. Well, I guess maybe he could be relevant. I don't know. I'm probably going to justify that. But I do not have time to go through all of these. But, I mean, we're literally starting with the Epic of Gilgamesh, and things are not looking terribly organized now. I see a few things that are out of date, but this is a really cool book. Someone might be interested in this. This was published by Penguin this year, and it is a catalog of all of the titles they have published in the Classics series. And I just think this is so cool, and it felt like such a monumental addition to my collection, so I'm very happy to have that. But up here, if you're reading the titles, we are pretty ancient, but getting to my favorite section, gosh, this is annoying having to fix the tripod. We're getting into I guess we still got ancient with Seneca down here, but we're getting into Suetonius, the Alexiad, you got your medieval times, and then we got our Renaissance and early modern Penguin classics, which are some of the most important books in my life. Just looking at it, I see Castiglione, I see Christine de Pizan, I see, this is the very first edition that I read Michel de Montaigne from, and I will talk about this probably in the next segment, but I've developed just an absolute love for this author, and I've collected so many of his works. Up here there's the older edition of this exact book, same translator and all, and then we have an apology for Raymond de Sebond. I could talk about him for a very long time, but he does mean so much to me, and these penguins do. All of these penguins mean so much to me. What a sentence. So for anyone else who is interested, well, I guess I should cut that. So here is a better look at the late medieval to early modern section. We have also got Boccaccio in here, which this book is just a romp. Read it in one section or read it bit by bit. You can do either, and it is just a hell of a time. But moving down here, you can kind of see, well, first of all, my dusty ass shelves, excuse that, but there are quite a few authors on this shelf. I would say the author I'm most excited to read, or the book I'm most excited to read here, is by this author who I cannot pronounce. How is this name pronounced? Goethe? That doesn't feel right. But I love Italian travel writing, and that's sort of a classic in that field. I'm also pretty excited to read The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, but it's kind of crazy that this book has blown up on the internet recently, in a very certain subsection of the sort of book community, the online book community. But a lot of people are reading it, and I cannot deny the fact that I am being influenced. So we'll see if that actually happens. I'm also very excited to read The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe. I read a phenomenal book that I guess I can show you really quick, Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney. And she talks about how Anne Radcliffe, and this story in particular, was a very, very big influence on Jane Austen. And I had never heard of her until reading that book, so I was very excited to see that. But I guess I'm excited to read all of these. I can't even lie to you. My last section of Penguins. So this is definitely the shelf I have read the least from. As you can tell, there's some really clean looking spines here. As I mentioned, I've got this very loosely chronological. So the last book I have of my Penguin collection is this Portable Feminist Reader. I think my favorite contemporary Penguin is Morrissey's autobiography that is currently on loan to a friend, but I just had the absolute best time with that. But we've also got, I mean, what else have I read from this shelf? I have, of course, read East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Another book I'm very much looking forward to, is The Cheapest Nights by Yusuf Idris. This is a contemporary Egyptian novel, and when I visited Egypt, this was actually recommended to me by my tour guide, and I just think I have so much to explore here. I have not read much Egyptian literature, so I think this is going to be very fun. So moving from our historiography and Penguin collection, I have got this shelf here, which I've really just labeled primary sources until we get to the bottom, but that's a later problem. So up here are my Oxford World Classics, and then I have two landmarks. I've got Herodotus and Thucydides, and then these gorgeous blue books, nice. Blue books are the Itati Renaissance Library series published by Harvard under James Hankins. These are some of my favorite books I have ever come across. This was my very first one, and I just feel so fondly looking at her. But they have new translations. The introductions and commentary are excellent in my opinion, and I just think they are absolutely beautiful. On the next shelf, we have basically my senior thesis shelf is what I could really call this one, because this section right here were all instrumental to my senior thesis. These are secondary texts, but these are the other voice in early modern England, or early modern Europe. They are similar to the Itati collection. These include new translations of texts by and about women that, for the most part, have not yet been translated into English until this new edition. So these have such a special place in my heart. This was my very first one, La Retirita, and I don't know if I could pick a favorite. I think the most enjoyable to read was actually this one here, The Education of a Christian Woman by Juan Luis Vives, who I think was Spanish. I might be wrong about that. I honestly can't remember, which is really not good. I'll put that here for now. So those are my my collections of primary sources. The rest of them, beginning with this girl, are just chronological. So I have literally got the Code of Hammurabi. I'm not gonna lie to you, I have not read this. I don't know if I ever will read this front to back, but I mean, come on, it's an essential. I have several of these books currently out, which is why they are falling over. This is a collection or an edition of a book I would love to collect someday. The Lobes, also published by Harvard, but they are a pretty penny, and my focus in school was the Renaissance, not necessarily ancient history, so maybe someday I'll get to those, but I'm satisfied for now. Next shelf, we are getting at the end of our ancient, into our medieval, into the Renaissance. I am really not even sure where to begin talking about this shelf. I feel like I could be here for so long, y'all. So all I'm gonna say is that this Viking Portable Library is a fantastic primer and Renaissance work in my humble opinion. I think my favorite books, is it bad that I have not read this yet? I've read sections, but I have not read Dante in full. So I guess I can't really be a Renaissance scholar until I actually do that, but I have time, hopefully. I love these 2 volumes of Petrarch's work, and we got more Giovanni Boccaccio down there. This text by Christina Pizan is really interesting. I do not see this talked about a lot, but this is kind of, okay, well, that's really good. This felt like such a good counterpart to Machiavelli's Prince, the earlier counterpart, but I think I should just make a different video all about that because I really have too much to say. But yeah, so the last text here is Boccaccio, and here we got more Renaissance. Things are clearly getting a little bit messy, but again, I know where exactly everything is. I mentioned earlier that I collect books by and about Michel de Montaigne. So here is my collection, or part of it. We've got the Donald Frame collection. I'm very excited to read this. This is John Florio translation, I think. Yeah, John Florio. This was, I think, one of the first, if not the first, translation of Montaigne into English, and this is what Shakespeare read. This is the translation of Montaigne that Shakespeare read. So that's very exciting to me. I've been meaning to read this for a long time. This is a little slim bio of Montaigne by Stefan Zweig. I think this is translated, right? Yeah, from a German author. But I've heard very good things about this, and I also really enjoy books from Pushkin Press. So I'm kind of saving that one for a rainy day, but I mean, it is a really rainy summer here, so I guess I should get to that soon. But anyways, up here you can see I've got some more secondary lit to Montaigne, which I know is not a primary source, but this feels like my Montaigne collection. This is gonna be adjusted to where I'm moving, or when I'm moving, this will be adjusted. But again, I know where things are, and that's fine for me for now. This was a fantastic read. This is published by Europa Compass, the imprint of Europa Editions. This is again, very slim volume that is just little tidbits about Montaigne. It quotes him a lot, but you can see the chapters are just bite-sized. And I think this is a very good introduction to Montaigne because you get a decent amount of primary material, but I think the author, Antoine Compagnon, you see the name, I think they did just a brilliant job of bringing Montaigne to life in an accessible yet honest way. So I would highly recommend this one here. Okay, this shelf stresses me out. We have a little bit more of primary source ending with, who do I have here? Running 1,000 Miles for Freedom. Yeah, that's my last primary source, but I got more of them. And then this feeds into just a general nonfiction section, and there's so much here. I will not be having a general nonfiction section in my next library, but we have everything from a field guide to grad school, to self-help, to studies about reading and memory, and this book actually is very, very good. We've got Umberto Eco's How to Write a Thesis, which honestly I didn't get much from, but it's just very much a product of its time, right? We've got a book about Latin. This is a very fun book by David Gran. We've got more Italian travelogues. We have got some secondary lit on Elena Ferrante, who is one of my favorite contemporary authors. That wants to go back there? Okay, it's not going to. This was an ARC I was sent. Custodians of Wonder by Elliott Smith. Truly one of the most fun reading experiences I've had in a very long time. I learned so much from this book, and I believe this is the author's first book, but you would think this man has been writing for decades. I mean, I think he is a journalist, so that does make sense. But really, really fun. This is one of those books that I feel like dads would love for Christmas. I guess I'm a dad in this situation, but a very, very giftable book that is sure to keep someone hooked. So, yes, the general nonfiction section, I know you're probably like having a panic attack. I get it. I do every single time I look here. I mean, I've got Mortimer Adler next to bird watching. It's just, there's just a lot going on here. Another amazing book. Wow, completely shifted the way I think about productivity culture. I don't want to say it's cured me of it, because I don't know if that's possible, but I think this is very, very valuable to me, especially in the changes that my life is about to experience. So, highly recommend that. Okay, so for the rest of the books I'm going to be showing you today, they are organized by the last name of the author. So starting up here, we've got my information and print culture studies and book history section that goes a few more shelves down as well. This is very specific because it's my principal academic interest, and it's just a topic that interests me endlessly. So this is kind of a big, I know that doesn't sound broad, but it is broad for this topic because, you know, I have got this book about various international contemporary bookshops, and then I've got, studies about the information revolution in early modern Europe, so more academic texts. And a special shout out to this one here because this was written by Dr. Dover, who was my main advisor and professor in undergrad, and he really cultivated my love for this topic, and he is just brilliant. I'm so thankful for him and his work. And then we've got Eisenstein. I'm sure if you're familiar with this topic, you know that she was or is one of the main reasons that a topic such as print history exists, because she really ignited the fire under its ass, and we love her for that. And then I forgot to mention, up here we have more books of this same subject that do not fit here. So here is another shelf of my print history. This is a really pretty book here. There's just some gorgeous illustrations in this book, and it kind of feels and reads like a textbook a little bit, but it's a textbook I want to read. So that was very, very enjoyable. We have got several books by the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Andrew Pettigrew, who's over at St. Andrews. I don't need to give this man an introduction. I think his corpus speaks for himself. This book here, The Book in the Renaissance, is so provocative, and it's so what are the words? I can't think of words. It's become a very foundational book to Renaissance book history, and I just find myself returning to it very, very often, which is not something I do with academic text, to be honest. But moving on, I already mentioned Jane Austen's bookshelf, but she has got another book called Printer's Error that she did with her husband, I believe. This book up here is pretty awesome to me. I found this when I went to London earlier this year, and it is just a collection of different scripts throughout time. So I think it is just absolutely beautiful. Something I'm very excited to read, I guess I can start talking about that on these shelves, is Women and the Book right here. edited by Jane Taylor and Leslie Smith. This has a lot to do with Christine de Pizan, who is one of my favorite characters throughout history, one of my favorite authors. She was a cornerstone of my senior thesis, and I think there's a lot here for me to engage with. So moving on, we have my section that I just called European History, Ancient through Renaissance. It's gotten a bit convoluted, but I'm about to move. I will adjust this in due time. So from left to right, we have got my Ancient Roman class textbook, and we go all the way to Jean Brucker and Giovanni and Lusana down there. I struggle with the Middle Ages because I really love ancient history, and the Renaissance was my main focus of study in college. I don't know why, but I feel like I've just never understood much about the Middle Ages. I definitely need to read more of these books. I think the next one I'm going to tackle is Barbara Tuchman's Distant Mirror, because I've heard that's just a good primer of medieval Europe. But I definitely have some blind spots in my history when it comes to this section. I would say my favorite book on this shelf is probably A Fatal Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum by Dr. Emma Southon. This book and this author has gotten pretty controversial because she uses words like fuck and shit, and I don't think maybe she doesn't say fuck, I don't know, but she writes provocatively and she writes like herself. She definitely is not writing for an academic audience, and there is still that ivory tower assumptions when it comes to history books, and she does away with them, and I love her for it. This is my second shelf of Renaissance history. Again, we have got it still organized by last name of the author, and we got some bangers on this shelf. We have got, of course, The Cheese and the Worms by Ginsberg. We have got Virtue Politics by Dr. James Hankins, who is the editor of those beautiful blue Italian Renaissance books I was talking about earlier. We've got Joan Kelly. There's really some classics on this shelf. I will say, what I'm most excited to read next is, this book is just beautiful. This is Shopping in the Renaissance. I don't know anything about that, so I can't wait to learn it, but I'm very excited to read The Innocents of Florence by Dr. Joseph Luzzi. I recently read his memoir about grief and Dante, and I've never had that experience before of coming to an academic book having read something non-academic by the author. So I'm very interested to see how his writing style changes and what his research process looks like. So I think that is going to be great. Another favorite here is Lisa Jardine's Erasmus Man of Letters, The Construction of Charisma in Print. Dr. Jardine does not need an introduction to any Renaissance fans out there, but I did a book report on this in my Reformation course, and it taught me how to actually read, and it taught me how to interpret and poke holes in arguments. So I just had a very, very fun time with this, and Erasmus is just an absolute hoot. And I think the author's argument is pretty compelling in this case. Okay, we made it to the last section about the Renaissance. Okay, again, where to begin? I recently got this from Laureate Fine Books in Pulteney, Vermont, and I just loved so much. Look at this dedication to 4 old friends of mine: Niccolo Machiavelli, Francesco Guicciardini, Baldassare Castiglione, and Francesco Matarazzo. Come on. I think that is just lovely. So I hope it's good. Here is a new bio of Boccaccio by Marco Santagata. I have not read it yet. I'm also very, very excited about Inventing the Renaissance by Dr. Ada Palmer. This is a tome. I mean, this is huge. And I wonder what exactly the myth is that she is going to be discussing. So guess I'll find out if I read it, or when I read it, I should say. But that's really exciting to me. I think my favorite book on this shelf, this is a very difficult one. The Burgermeister's Daughter by Dr. Stephen Osment is fantastic, and it's a micro history, which is one of the ways I was first introduced to the Renaissance, though I do think this is more Reformation. But that is very good. I also really enjoyed The Verge by Dr. Patrick Wyman. He structured that book by basically looking at different characters of the Renaissance, but the way he wrote them, he opened each chapter with a very not fictionalized but creative narrative of each character. So he opened the Gutenberg chapter describing one day after work where he was exhausted from the press, and talked about how sticky and black his fingers were from the ink, and he really brought them to life. And I think that's a plus for any history book, academic or popular. So this next shelf is all history that is not ancient, medieval, or Renaissance. I have got all of these organized by last name of the author, as I already mentioned, and we do have a few more up here that do not fit on the shelves, but we have quite a range of topics. I've got everything from contemporary U.S. history with Dr. Carol Anderson to Matthew Carr's Blood and Faith. We've got The Rape of Nanking, which is very difficult to get through, but very necessary. We also have One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El-Akkad. This is a very, very pointed look at the Western response to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Here, An Unfinished Love Story by Doris Kearns Goodwin. This was such an exciting book for me because it's very different than what I usually read, but my book club at the time at work was, they voted to read it, and it's just awesome. It's equal parts memoir and history, but I decided to put it in my history section because of everything else Dr. Goodwin has written, and I enjoyed it very much. I think the one I'm most excited to read is probably A Village in the Third Reich by Julia Boyd and Angelica Patel, because it's kind of micro history. I mean, it's pretty long, but it looks at one particular village at the time in, I think, rural Germany. So I don't know anything about I don't know anything about it. Let's see, where does this take place? Hidden deep in the Bavarian mountains lies the picturesque town of Oberstdorf. Probably saying that wrong, but I think this looks awesome, so I'm very excited. So moving on with our general history section, I have got back over here The Wager by David Grann. This is such an awesome way to get interested in history, especially if that's not a genre you have read before. The narrative style of David Grann makes it so easy to just get completely wrapped up and swept away at sea to the story we have here. And this was my book club's very first pick, so I think this book is always going to have just such a special place in my heart. It's absolutely fantastic. As you can see, I got more books off this shelf right now, so things are slipping and sliding a little bit. I'm very curious to read this book by Erik Larson. I've heard that Erik Larson's style is somewhat similar to David Gran's, of just how much of a narrative or how smooth of a narrative he's able to compose. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think, let's see, one of the best books I've ever read is If This Is a Woman by Sarah Helm. Inside Ravensbrück, Hitler's concentration camp for women. So I didn't even know that was a thing. I did not know there was a specific concentration camp for women. And this is a very long book. She's about like 900 pages, and it's so harrowing. It was very, very difficult to read, but it feels very necessary because this is, at least in my experience, not something that was taught in higher education or in public education as well. And the stories of these women that Sarah Helm was able to tell have stuck with me ever since I read this over a year ago now. And I don't have the greatest attention span so for something to stick with me that long is it means something. Let's see, what else can I say about this shelf? I think the book I'm most excited to read is probably that big orange one right there, Post-War by Tony Judt. I have never read anything by Tony Judt, but I know he was colleagues with Dr. Timothy Snyder, who is one of my favorite historians, and Dr. Snyder praised and continues to praise Dr. Judt's work. So there's something very exciting about that to me. And if you couldn't tell by the title, it's a history of Europe since 1945. My second major in college was international affairs, so I feel like I have a pretty good idea already of the major events that happened from 1945 to now, but I'm interested in what else this book can teach me. So, let's see. I think that's all I have to say about this shelf. Besides, we got this beautiful pack, that's not the right word, collection of my Oxford very short introductions. The very first one I was introduced to was History by Dr. John Arnold, and I have read all of these besides The Ancient Near East, which I got at a museum recently, but I think these were just so fun. Some are better than others, of course, but I think the idea is absolutely fantastic, and it's been very effective for me, at least. And would you believe it? We got more history, again, by author. This shelf has a bit more political science as well. I kind of struggled with where to put that, because something like Erasing History right there by Dr. Jason Stanley is definitely more contemporary, but there's a lot of theory as well as history included in his contemporary analysis. So I'm putting it with the general history section. This is a book I'm very excited to read. This is 18 Days in Tahrir, Stories from Egypt's Revolution, edited by Hatem Rushdie. This is a very, I accidentally grabbed that one too. This is a really artistic book, like the physical construction of it. I flipped through this a lot, and I think the design choices are quite telling, and they've got some really really gorgeous images sprinkled throughout with each of the 18, or that's 18 days. I was thinking it was 18 stories, but there's probably more than 18 stories, but let's just figure it out. Yeah, so each one, little less than 10 pages it looks. Very excited to read this, so I hope I'm able to get to that soon. I think my favorite book on this shelf is actually going to be Knowing What We Know by Simon Winchester right here. Intellectual history is not what Simon Winchester focuses on. So this book was a little bit out of his, I don't want to say his comfort zone, because I don't know if he was comfortable in writing it, but it was different from the rest of his corpus. And you could tell that he was kind of new to certain things. So it felt like he was learning alongside with the reader in a way. I hope that doesn't sound demeaning, because it is a very interesting book and I learned a lot, but it was very humble in its approach, which was something I appreciated a lot. This next shelf is the bane of my existence, and the shelf below it, I have got this labeled, if you can't see, historical biographies, and I see what I was trying to do, and I wasn't mad at it for about, I don't know, 10 minutes afterwards. But if you can already tell from the spines, I'm sure, but we are going from Jimmy Carter to Renaissance to medieval Europe to 1960s to Machiavelli. Like, it's just too clashy, and all of these are traditional historical biographies, but you can't write a historical bio without including a lot of other history in it. So I think at my next library, these are just going to be interspersed with the areas they belong to, because it really does just drive me insane. I think my favorite book on this shelf is definitely Red Comet by Heather Clark. This is all about Sylvia Plath and the world she grew up in, and how it was affected, or how her literature and her writing was a consequence of everything she went through, everything she felt. And this has a lot of literary analysis in it, which is not something I'm good at. I'm a bit new to that. So I found it very helpful for Heather Clark's secondary information about, all of Sylvia's poems and her short stories and her journals. It was very helpful, and I just learned so much too about Britain in the 1960s and America, because that's where she lived, but she lived in England for the last few years of her life. But it just written so beautifully, and this is huge. This is look at the way that just flops. This is 1,200 pages, if I can remember correctly, but it absolutely blew by, and that is how you know you are in good hands. What else? Okay, this is an interesting book. This is another one that my book club at work discussed, and Walter Isaacson is a very popular biographer for a reason. He has an ability to make things very, very accessible. He was writing about, some of Leonardo's inventions that are quite difficult to understand, but reading this book made it make sense. So Walter Isaacson has a lot of talent, absolutely, but you can see I had a time with annotating this bad boy, but I thought he approached this book knowing what he already wanted to say, and he used evidence he cherry-picked evidence to support those claims. And in my opinion, well, no, that's not even my opinion, that's just a historical convention. You can't pick what the evidence says. The evidence needs to speak to you. You can't force your words into it. So that was unfortunately my experience with it, but I did still enjoy my time reading it, again, because Walter Isaacson is a fantastic writer, and there are some beautiful images throughout, but I was not pleased with this one. Here is my last shelf on this shelf, and my last historical bios. So I've clearly got a few out as well. Like, it just stresses me out. Like, we're going from the Duke of Montefeltro to Jackie Kennedy. Like, you see what I mean? It's just too much for me. Something I'm very excited to read is this biography of Isabella Stewart Gardner. She's a very, very famous art collector and or private collector and art curator. She is deceased. She lived at the turn of the century, I believe. But she has a phenomenal museum in Boston that is probably my favorite museum I've ever been to. And this bio, who are you written by? I'm sorry, I can't remember. Nathaniel Silver and Diana Sieve Greenwald. I know for a fact that at least Nathaniel Silver is, I think, one of the head curators at this museum. And you can see this was actually published by them. So he, or both authors, I don't know, must have a very intimate understanding of Miss Gardner. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the curator's familiarity with the objects in the museum influence this biography of her. So I think that's going to be great. And I accidentally shoved Poe behind there. That's fine for now. Another favorite, or I guess I haven't spoken of any favorites. One favorite I have on this shelf is Jane Stevenson's Light of Italy, The Life and Times of Federico da Montefeltro, Duke of Urbino. This, again, the construction of the book is just, I find something so beautiful about it. And this is definitely one that belongs just in my Renaissance history collection, but I thought it was fantastic. And one that I'm very excited to read is probably going to be A Bright Cold Day, a bio of George Orwell by Nathaniel Waddell. And one reason I'm excited to read this, or at least this specific edition, is because it is signed and it is a first edition. I got this at a bookstore in London for ridiculously cheap, actually. But George Orwell is one of my favorite authors of all time, but I've never read a bio of him, so I think this will definitely be on my priority list. So we have made it, alas, to the last shelf in this room. Don't worry, there's more, but starting out this shelf, I have just got my gender studies section, and I've read quite a bit on this shelf. I really enjoy those three right there. They're the, I think it's a Belknap at Harvard that does that, but their History of Women. I've got volumes 2, right? Yeah, 2, 3, and 5, and I think they're very great. I don't like having one hardback and 2 paperbacks, but I guess there are bigger issues in the world. Let's see what else. We've got some Roxane Gay, who was kind of my first introduction into contemporary gender studies. I enjoy most of what she writes. This book here is very interesting and taught me a lot. This is Our Women on the Ground, Essays by Arab Women Reporting from the Arab World. It's kind of a short story collection, narrative short story collection, written by many different Middle Eastern women, and this was not something I was familiar with, so yeah, learned a lot. I've got The Second Stage by Betty Friedan up there, but down here, I guess we can do the second shelf too. I've got The Feminine Mystique right up there, which I actually just recently finished, and I think I need to do its own video for that because I would be here for a very long time if I were to say everything I had to about that one. A book I'm excited to read on this shelf, I don't want to pull it out, but it's Antigone Rising right there by Helen Morales. And I think that is just some feminist interpretation of Greek myth to my understanding. A really good book is 3 Women by Lisa Taddeo. I think this was turned into a pretty popular show, but this is, it is true, a true stories about 3 different women and their, how their idea of sex changes, how their idea of gender changes based on the things happening around them. So that is very interesting. And right sort of at the end here, I've got my massive bookmark collection, but hiding behind that, I've got the first of my collection of essays. We've got, oh, I forgot to mention I got Mary Wollstonecraft, read that recently and really enjoyed it. But I have got Melissa Broder, and then I have several Italo Calvinos here. I actually have not yet read any of his nonfiction. I've only read Italo Calvino's fiction so far, but I'm very much looking forward to these. I'm honestly kind of saving them for a rainy day. I mean, look at that title. 6 Memos for the Next Millennium, it says. That is just an absolute banger of a title. So lots of exciting stuff here. All right, so first full shelf of my essays. I think this is one of, if not the most read shelf in my entire library. I have read probably all of these, but like 1 or maybe 2. And a lot of these have been in my collection for a very long time. Some of my favorite books ever to read are these 3 at the end there. They are The Diaries of a Bookseller series by Sean Bithell, who owns the bookshop in Wigtown, Scotland. It is endlessly interesting and so witty and funny, and it's impossible not to smile while you're reading those. At least that was my reading experience. Let's see what else we got. This is a book I have not read that I'm very, very excited about. This is called This Is Not the End of the Book by Umberto Eco and Jean-Claude Carrière. 2 great men discuss our digital future. I am much more familiar with Umberto Eco than I am Carrière, but this is formatted just as a conversation between the 2 men, and I don't know, just This Is Not the End of the Book is a very provocative title to me, so I'm excited to dive into that at some point. I loved this book here. This is called Moving the Moon by Andrea Marcolongo, A Night at the Acropolis Museum. This is that same Europa Compass imprint I mentioned earlier that I love everything I've read from this imprint. I accidentally forgot a bookmark in here, but this is about a scholar who was invited to spend the night alone at the Acropolis Museum in Athens. And I don't know, I was just immediately so jealous of her getting to do that, of being able to be surrounded by nobody but these marbles and all these stories that, you know, you can never learn all of them. There's just such a endless pit of fascination. I'm just saying words at this point. I'm tired, but very good, very interesting, and a very unique story in my opinion. Surprise, surprise, things are getting messy again. Starting at the end of the shelf, we finish up my essays. I've got a lot of Rebecca Solnit. I'm very excited to read Orwell's Roses by her. It's sort of a biography and essays, to my understanding, of George Orwell. I am very excited for that. And then we move into what I have listed as letters and journals. I've got the classics. We got Miss Anne Frank. We've got Miss Sylvia Plath. And then we've got some Rilke. And at the edge of this shelf is all of my poetry, or contemporary poetry I have listed. I struggle with poetry, honestly. I have to be in such a particular mood for it, and I just feel very stupid a lot of the time reading poetry. I feel like a lot of it goes over my head. I would say my favorite poet it's probably Mary Oliver, and I know that's a lot of people's favorite poets or favorite poet, but I think she just speaks to me. I think her writing about nature is beautiful, and I always feel a little more hopeful at the world, or about the world, after reading her. There's some interesting editions up here that I've not read yet, but I will show them to you. I got these from a super awesome bookstore in London. We have two books, same edition. We've got 100 Disbelief Russian Anti-War Poems, edited by Julia Nemirovskaya. Yeah, I tried. And then we have got Out of Gaza, New Palestinian Poetry. I don't know which one I'm gonna want to get to first, because they both, I imagine, tackle themes of anti-war and what it's like to have your nation desecrated and genocided. So I'm very excited to read these and learn something. My last shelf, this is one of my favorites in my entire collection. This is my art history / criticism shelf, and art history was my first love. I wanted to study this originally at university, ultimately decided not to, but somewhere along the way, in 7th grade actually, I was just attacked with this love for particularly Impressionism, and it has never really left. It's been one of the very few constants in my life, and I'm just very thankful for my relationship with that subject. So this was one of my first ever art history books, The Story of Art, Painting from Giotto to the Present Day by A.N. Hodge. This was like $5 at Barnes & Noble and or Books A Million, and I read this full thing so many times, and it has such a special place in my heart. Then we have got quite a few books by Ross King. He was kind of my gateway drug into Impressionism. I was assigned The Judgment of Paris in my AP art history class for summer reading, and I had a hoot with this one. Lord, I don't highlight books anymore, so this is kind of scary, but it's everything. It was great to me, apparently. I've got a few museum catalogs, like I've got A Guide to the Louvre, I have got Michelangelo and Raphael in the Vatican, Rembrandt's. These were my 2 textbooks for my Italian Renaissance art course. This is an exhibition catalog, Federico da Montefeltro in his library, and I use this for a paper I wrote, and I don't want to take all these out, but it's one of the most beautiful books I own. And up here I just have more random art history. This is the bio of a painting by Gustav Klimt. This is Winston Churchill's little notes about painting. We've got a memoir by Jean Renoir, who was the son of what's his name? Auguste Renoir. Sorry, I had to read it. He was the son of him. I've got a little history of art. This is a great series. I have several of these editions. I think these are from Yale. We've got Gombrich's The Story of Art, an absolute classic, and another beautifully constructed book. I wish you could feel this from the video. I've got Gerard's bio of Artemisia Gentileschi, and then I have got Jonathan Har's The Lost Painting. I have not read this yet, but I've heard very good things about it, and I'm sure I'll get to it at some point. So we are in a different location now. We are outside the library, and this shelf has become a catch-all. There is a lot going on here, but as I mentioned in the sort of intro to this thing, I know where every single book is. So I guess I can start by talking about the sort of 3 piles you see on top of the shelf. So over here is a sort of reading list I made for myself to complete before my graduate program begins. I had a lot of other books on this list. These are just the ones I have not gotten to yet. Hopefully will soon. Here is my priority TBR for fiction. These are just books I wanted to read for a very long time that I'm kind of prioritizing, but I honestly have too much going on right now for any of these. But that's a temporary thing. I am very excited to read The Betrothed by Alessandro Manzoni, but even though this is in my favorite Penguin Classic Edition, I do think I want to get the updated translation because one of my favorite authors of fiction, Jhumpa Lahiri, she praised it and she actually writes the foreword to that book, I think. So I might get a different edition, we'll see. We've got the first of Hilary Mantel's Henry V, Oliver Cromwell series, Wolf Hall. I know this will require a lot of attention, so I'm kind of waiting for the right time to start that. Herman Melville, Elena Ferrante, that's one of my final few Ferrantes I have not read. Then we have got Kristen Lavransdatter. This was recommended to me by one of my favorite professors ever. And closing it out, we got Thomas Schlesser's Mona's Eyes. I've heard very mixed things about this book, but it's published by Europa, which is one of my favorites, and I've read several other translations by the translator of this book, Hildegard Searle, and I've really liked them, so I'm open to checking out this other one. Then, let's see if I can stabilize this. Cool. I've got my priority TBR nonfiction that has nothing to do with my grad program. Again, we'll see when I can actually get to these, but I've got a biography of Montaigne by Sarah Bakewell at the top there. Democracy Rules has been on my list forever. I had a professor recommend that to me, but it's been a long time. Let's see what else we got. I mean, y'all can read, but something else of note, Chasing Beauty. This is another bio of Isabella Stewart Gardner, the collector I was talking about, and this was pretty popular and I've heard great things about it. And then below her we've got Angela Y. Davis's Women, Race, and Class. This is just a classic. I've read selections from it, but I gotta read the full thing. Then we have got The Body Keeps the Score. We've got some books related to health. And then we've got the final boss. We have got Bloodlands by Timothy Snyder. I've read almost all of his other books, but I've heard such good things for this one, so I'm kind of saving it for myself. But I mean, there is no time like the present, I guess. Okay, so I just took those books off, and I know what you're thinking. This is crazy. What is the organization to this? And the answer is that there is absolutely none. This has become, again, my catch-all shelf. A lot of these books are ones that I recently purchased or acquired. So we can start with these piles up here. Not sure what else to say besides I know that this is definitely stressful. I feel it too. We've got a few books over here. These are the older Harper editions of Evil and Woe, and I am probably going to read from the newer editions, but I like collecting these. Then I've got some books related to grief when I made a reading list for that. On the books that are actually standing on the shelf, again, no rhyme or reason to them. There's a few books I've already read here, like The Bookseller of Florence by Ross King is just so good, so gripping, reads like a novel in my opinion. We've got some more Renaissance history, some Lauro Martinez. I've got some books about Machiavelli. We've got some Camille Paglia, The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. I have got an edition of Don Quixote that I am very excited to read at some point, but Don Quixote requires my full undivided attention, and a lot of things are having my attention right now, but I'm definitely looking forward to reading that at some point. So definitely looking forward to all of these having an actual spot on my shelves at some point, if they make it with me to where I'm moving. So the books that are on the actual shelves of this bookshelf are my contemporary biography. This is another one of those sections where I have read the majority of these. Most of the bios, or if I'm trying out a new bio, I will get it from the library. I only keep ones that I know I will reread or ones that had a big impact on me. So some favorites here, definitely The Storyteller by Dave Grohl, but unfortunately he has turned out to be kind of a questionable person, so I have mixed feelings on that, but I can't deny that the memoir itself is fantastic. My Roman Year by Eliza Holstein it made me feel so seen. It is wonderful. And then next to it, Between Two Kingdoms by Suleika Jaouad is one of those books that I found at the exact moment that I needed it. And I went through some very similar things to what she went through in this book. And it made me feel so seen and made me feel so less alone. And I'm so thankful for it. We've got Amanda Knox's biography, Waiting to Be Heard. That's one of the first books I ever sought out as an adult. I mean, I actually think I was like 17 when I read it, but it was one of the books that got me kind of reintroduced to reading for fun. We have got Chanel Miller's Know My Name, which is fantastic. Reading Lolita in Tehran. Oh my God, fabulous book. We've got the Obama's memoirs. Then we've got a really interesting memoir called A Woman in the Polar Night by Christiane Ritter. This was one of those books I kind of just stumbled upon and read it during a snowstorm. And I'm not going to say anything about it because I think this is one of those books that you go into, or if you go into it blind, you're all the better for it. But it's very good. It's very, very good. And let's see if I can get to this last shelf. Kind of. Okay. We have got a few more bios here. Favorite is, out of this section, is either The Backyard Bird Chronicles or Educated by Tara Westover, but also The Saltstones by Helen Whybrow is absolutely gorgeous. And the rest of the books are another sort of catch-all. All of these books belong in different sections. I mean, we have everything from London Falling, which I just read, to, I mean, we have the Communist Manifesto over here, and then that's nearby Arturo's Island by Elsa Morante. There's a lot going on. Again, these will find a place with me in a few weeks, hopefully. Okay, now we're in my bedroom and we are almost done, but here I have a very chaotic assortment of books that makes no sense, but also to me makes all the sense, because I feel like if you were to grab a random selection of books and say that, and wrap it in a bow and call it Jean, this is what it would be. We've got volumes 4, 5, and 6 of Gibbon's Decline and Fall. Still need to get the Everyman's edition of the first 3, but I'll do that later. We've got Scott Pilgrim, and then all of these are the journals from the RSA, the Renaissance Society of America. All of those I was given for free because they're from like 2005 and 6 and whatnot. I was very young at that time, so I was obviously not a member of the RSA by then, but these were an old professors and I got them for free. We've got the Lord of the Rings, which is very out of character for me because I've never read a fantasy, but I read it recently or over the past year and it changed my life. I've never enjoyed a reading experience more than when I read those. And then up here, I have got some Shakespeare, mostly secondary, plus the complete sonnets and poems by Oxford up here. I've recently, over the past few years, gotten very into Shakespeare, and I want to have my own Shakespeare section, but like in my library, but right now, in between moving, everything just kind of ended up here. And here's the rest of my Shakespeare collection. So I've got some secondary up here, and obviously the editions I prefer for the plays themselves are the Folger mass market editions. I just love the expository essays that each one of these includes at the end, and I find that the definitions that are on the other side of the text are very, very helpful, and it's just clear that these are the Shakespeare experts, and also they just fit perfectly in the hand. You know what I mean? I'm pretty new to Shakespeare. I've only read maybe 5 or 6 plays at this point. I think my favorite one, it's got to be Timon of Athens. And this is one I had never heard of until my local Shakespeare house staged it. And so I ended up reading it before I saw that performed live. And it is completely visceral. And I think most Shakespeare is still pretty relevant. You can always find something relevant in his work. It's very timeless. But something about Timon of Athens just registered for me very, very well, and it hit home. So I think that's my favorite. I'm very excited to read Hamlet next. I have not read Hamlet yet, but I did just read Hamnet and watched it by Maggie O'Farrell, and that's another one of those that deserves its own video, but that'll definitely be my next read from Shakespeare. The last shelf, y'all, we're almost there. This is my fiction shelf. I have got it organized by classics and then contemporary. Up here, I have got my New York Review books, one of my favorite editions of books ever. My favorite book on this shelf is hard because there's a lot of good ones here, but one that I thought was really unique is Elsa Morante's Lies and Sorcery, translated by Jenny McPhee. This, again, was just a total surprise, and it inspired this Italian post-war fiction hyperfixation that I had for a while, because it was just so Baroque and soap opera-like, and I absolutely loved that book. We have got Fahrenheit 451. We've got my Italo Calvino's The Stranger by Camus, which I didn't fully understand, to be honest. But then we've got The Great Gatsby, which is probably the book I have read the most in my life, at about, I think, 5 times now. Second shelf of classics, I have got quite a few books on this shelf. I, Claudius by Robert Graves is one I need to finish. I started it, but I'm such a mood reader and I wasn't in the right headspace for it, so I gotta go back to that one. I have got a gorgeous edition of Les Mis that a friend gave to me that I'm very excited to read someday. Brave New World altered my brain chemistry. Gone with the Wind. This was another really big surprise for me. I was not expecting to like this at all, and I had to read it for work, but I ended up having such a kind of like a eureka moment with this book. It changed the way I think about the South, and it changed the way I approach historical fiction in general. So if you have the time to devote to this book, and then watch the super long movie afterwards, I think it's totally worth it. And this is coming from someone who never thought they would enjoy Gone with the Wind or just Southern fiction, honestly. What else? I've got Lolita. Oof. My favorite book of all time, kind of, is 1984, and I've started collecting editions of it. And then we have a few other George Orwells over here, and then we close this shelf out with Miss Sylvia Plath and some Poe. So we close out the classic section entirety with Virginia Woolf and some Evelyn Waugh. Train to Pakistan was also a very good book. But now we're jumping into our contemporary fiction. I'm going to be getting rid of a lot of this shelf. I've read quite a few of them, but I don't find myself inclined to reread a lot of contemporary fiction. So unfortunately, I think a lot of these are gonna find a better home. One that's definitely staying is The Rule of Four, though, by Ian Caldwell and Dustin Thomason. This is based on a professor who, I can't say I know him because I've never had an in-depth conversation with him, but I'm very, very familiar with his work and his teaching style. And reading this, knowing who it was about, is just such a fun time. The book, I can't speak to any objective quality to it, but it's very closely related to my field of study, and it made everything just that much more real. Here we've got some Slavenka Draculic. I've only read her nonfiction, but I'm really looking forward to these books. I've got Umberto Eco. I've got two of Elena Ferrante's books. Then we've got the rest of them here. I hate the fact that the My Brilliant Friend series was broken up on my shelves, but it's okay. We've got some more books. These here are apparently Josephine Bonaparte smut. Yeah, that's a thing. I don't know if I'm ever gonna read those, but I kind of just want to keep them because Josephine Bonaparte smut, crazy. We've got a lot of these books I read a long time ago, like Claire Keegan, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Demon Copperhead is fantastic. I mentioned I really like Jhumpa Lahiri, and there's her books. Transcription. This was an interesting new release. I read this because I heard it was, I think, longlisted for the Booker, and it deals with sort of attention span and the recollection of memories, and it's very, very provocative. I still don't really know how I feel about it, but I have been thinking about it a lot ever since I read it. And alas, my final shelf, guys. Okay, we can do this. There's a lot on here I read a very long time ago, like My Year of Rest and Relaxation, After Dark, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. But now, then we have some, what am I trying to say? Recent reads, such as Elif Shafak, who has become one of my favorite authors. I've read The 40 Rules of Love, I have read There Are Rivers in the Sky, and I've read The Island of Missing Trees. So there's still a few more I get to experience for the first time, which is very exciting to me. We have got Domenico Starnone's House on Via Gemito. This won the Strega Prize, which is the equivalent of the Booker just in Italy, and it's a family saga. Again, much like up there, Elsa Morante. I found this to be very soap opera-like, but I loved every single second of it. Donna Tartt, I have no words. She's great. Read her if you've never read her. The Artist by Lucy Steeds was another surprise. This was the Waterstones debut fiction winner, I think last year, and I was not expecting to love this as much as I did. I picked it up on a whim after someone who saved my life recommended it to me. I'm not even kidding. And he really enjoyed it, and I was kind of skeptical, but I ended up loving it. And the last few books, we got the Murasaki Bookshop series, very cute, fun, easy to read. A Little Life, not cute or fun or easy to read. And we're ending it with The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I have not read this yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Finished filming and forgot that I'm currently reading 2 books, and why not show them to you. Excuse the black eye, by the way. First, The Odyssey by a guy named Homer. Don't know if you've heard of this one, but I'm of course reading this because the film is about to come out, and I've read this before in the Stanley Lombardo translation, but I know that this is the translation that Christopher Nolan used in writing and directing this new film. So I'm excited about it. There's a lot of incels who say that this translation sucks. I wonder if it's because a woman wrote it. Crazy. But yeah, I'm literally only 10 pages into the text and the introduction. So I have a long way to go with this one. And then I am reading A Midsummer Night's Dream by the Bard, William Shakespeare. This is again in that Folger edition, but I am about to see this performed live in a few days, and I'm having a great time reading this. It's so funny. I think this is probably the funniest Shakespeare I've ever read. Much Ado About Nothing is very funny, but this one is just hitting the funny bone. So, yeah, having a great time. That is what I'm currently reading.